Mona Kandil, correspondent, joins us from occupied Ramallah to tell us more about this day. And Syed Moshin Abbas is a journalist and political commentator joining us from Islamabad for an analysis. Mona, first over to you. Tell us what you're seeing on this day where you're at.
Palestinians across the occupied West Bank took to the streets, including here in the city of Ramallah, to commemorate decades of ethnic cleansing of their homeland, when an estimated 700,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes to make way for Jewish immigrants to establish what's known today as Israel. 75 years have passed since the 1948, and every year Palestinians commemorate with pain their Nakba, their catastrophe. However, they continue to say that they are still have the right to return back to their homes and their lands, regardless of the fact that Israel, the Israeli regime, is doing their utmost to make Palestinians' life, even those who are still living the lands occupied in 1948, intolerable. They were 700,000 Palestinians lived their homes and lands in 1948. Today we are speaking about millions of refugees are living in the refugee camps in the occupied West Bank, in Al-Quds, in the Gaza Strip, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, and hundreds of thousands are scattered in countries around the world. They are all insisting on their right of return to their homes and to their lands they were expelled from. Today, Palestinians here at the Manara Square in downtown Ramallah are holding a rally. Many Palestinians were holding, let's say, pictures, as well as they were holding metal keys to express their insistence that the day will come to return back to the lands they were expelled from. Of course, the Palestinians today believe that despite the fact the Nakba is a painful and a sad occasion, but it's also a reminder that the younger generation will exert all efforts to stick to the right of return. Palestinians today, despite the non-stop aggression, despite the non-stop crimes against them, whether in the Gaza Strip, whether in the occupied West Bank and in Al-Quds, despite the non-stop demolition of the homes, the annexation of the lands to the illegal settlements, and the demolition of their homes, of course, and their properties, Palestinians today are even more united, and they say it clearly that they are adherent to the choice of resistance, that the struggle and the resistance is the only way to fight the Israeli regime, to end the Israeli occupation, to fulfill their dream and return back to their homes.
Let me come to you, Syed Moshin Abbas. I'd like to find out from you, obviously, your thoughts on this day, but my question is that the UN for the first time is actually going to be holding a special session, as they have called it, in order to mark this day, and that's the first. And they are going to recognize this day in that sense. I'm wondering why they have picked this year to do that, and whether that's reflective of what has happened with this extreme cabinet, or any other adjectives that you'd like to use along those lines. Perhaps maybe it's a result of that.
I think it could possibly be, but also you can't underestimate the strength of the resistance axis and the support for the Palestinian resistance by the growing power of the resistance front itself. Now, we've seen the success of the resistance front in places like Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon. So now in Palestine, once we've achieving a kind of a unity between the resistance forces themselves and a backup from the broader resistance front against global arrogance and against the Anglo-Zionist imperialism in the region, you're seeing the reaction from the likes of the UN possibly, and some of their erstwhile kind of friends in the region, the Gulf Arabs, in beginning to woo the resistance movement. So, for instance, Hamas went to Saudi Arabia just very recently as one example of that. And this could, I mean, with some analysts, they may regard this as really a kind of insurance policy, because if they see that the resistance front is giving military backup, is having success in the military defense of the Palestinians, which is now happening for the first time. Of course, weapons have never been part of the Palestinian agenda, but they are now. Missiles are just the beginning. Homemade rockets, for instance, are just the beginning of potentially a far more powerful ballistic missile and drone capability in the near future. So this would worry Israel. It would worry those people who've been sheltering Israel. United Nations is one of those institutions which has protected and sheltered the Israeli atrocities. Israel has been committing genocide, ethnic cleansing, creating enclaves, imposing apartheid, imposing second-class citizenship on Palestinians, and created the biggest ghetto in the world, in Gaza, biggest open-air prison in the world. All of this has happened under the eye of the international institutions like the UN, without really a squeak, to be honest. But what the Nakba represents is almost a concrete part of that Israeli colonialism today, because the Nakba isn't past tense. 750,000 Palestinians, yes, they were expelled, displaced, pushed out from their ancestral homes. 500 villages and towns were destroyed, but that wasn't the end of it. The Nakba has continued. That catastrophe has continued on today, to the point where a pogrom was just carried out in the Palestinian town of Hawara, and Israel's finance minister, rather than sympathizing with the Palestinians for that sort of lawlessness, said that state forces should be doing this, not those civilian individuals, Jewish extremists, you have to say, essentially. So there is no difference between the state policy now and the policy of the most violent extremist, Jewish Israeli Zionists in Palestine. And essentially, the Israeli government officials, while they deny the term of Nakba, no, don't forget that in 2009, the Israeli education minister actually banned the use of the word in all textbooks in occupied Palestine. In 2011, the Knesset adopted a law to actually prohibit any institute from any commemorative event. So they've been slamming down on this word Nakba. They don't even want to recognize the word, and yet they're implementing the Nakba on a daily basis. And what Israel really wants to do is to shape the control the Palestinian memory, and to control the history and the narrative, and to advance a Zionist sort of immoral framework upon an oppressed people. Now that's what you're up against with Israel and its relationship with the Nakba. What you're seeing with the Palestinians is that for the first time, the Nakba is now being converted into a true revolution, a true uprising against the Israeli occupation in a military sense. And I think that bodes well for the liberation of Palestine. Nothing else will. None of these international organizations that want peace in the region, they won't do it for you. The reality is the Palestinians will have to do it themselves, but they need the support of the Arab world, of the Muslim world, the wider world that wants justice and believes in justice. And I believe that the military solution will either force the Israelis to come to the table and make real peace, or it will help to expel the most violent, the most extremist Zionists and Israelis in that country, and actually give back the land to the people. That's got to be done, I think, one way or another. The military solution has got to be a part of that.
How would you define the way that the U.S. views Nakba?
I think the US views Nakba as an inconvenience of history. They've obviously taken on the baton from the British, who oversaw the Nakba, essentially, who precipitated it, who facilitated it, who engineered it with all of the policies that they implemented. But there was no difference between the British imperialists and the American imperialists. The same Zionist powers, the same money mafias were behind both. All that happened after the Second World War was that the primary position, or the leadership, went to the American institutions and their establishments. So the Americans view the Nakba as really an inconvenience. They view Israel as it stands as an absolute vital part of their policy of divide and rule and plunder in West Asia. They can't come out of that vision. They don't have any other alternative policy, because they're gripped by the Zionist money mafias who control not only the Senate, they control Wall Street, and they control the bulk of the American institutions. And indeed, there's big business. Having the problem of Israel in West Asia helps them to sell lots of weapons. You know, the likes of, you know, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, they're making billions, if not trillions, out of this. Over the 70 years, it certainly runs into the several trillions. So, you know, big arms industry, the money mafias, the Zionists, they make money out of war. Palestine affords them a huge opportunity to create conflict and to make money. And that's what they've been doing, one way or the other.
Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Syed Moshin Abbas, journalist and political commentator from Islamabad. We had Monica Kandil, a correspondent from Nakba, Ramallah.